Welcome to Recovery Bros podcast. This is a weekly YouTube show where two guys, Doug and myself, who are in recovery, are going to translate addiction, mental health science into simple systems that young men can actually live through honest conversation, practical frameworks, and even some real world reps. And I'm really excited to be here. Doug and I have known each other for years now, and this is something that we've wanted to do, and we're so excited to bring it to y'all.
I'm so excited for this. Like, I get so many comments from young men on my other YouTube channel or just through social media or in real life in general about how much they're struggling, how much they're feeling lonely, they're addicted to drugs, smoking too much weed, vaping, etc. And they feel like lost or they feel like they can't like connect. They feel like they're being forced into AA and they don't want to go to AA. They're being forced into treatment, which by the way, I think treatment is great, but maybe they're like, I don't know if I need it. Or whatever the case may be. And they feel like there's nothing for them. So I'm really excited that we're going to come on here and just share from our own experiences, talk about what's worked for us, what we've learned in our own research, and content creation, and also bringing on like real world experts each month to kind of bounce ideas off of and hear like real tactics and tips that people can implement into their lives.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think young men have been left behind a bit in the recovery world.
Hmm.
If you look at the statistics, it's pretty obvious. You know, the majority of people who successfully suicide are men. The most people who are depressed are and not being treated for it are men. Um, Most people who live on the streets are men. Young men are being left behind in recovery, and I think it's because we believe, or have been led to believe, that depression for men and women are the same. That anxiety for men and women are the same, and that addiction recovery for men and women should be the same. And I don't believe that to be true. And I think that the majority of programming out there is around validation, wanting people to feel seen and heard. And I don't think men care so much about feeling seen and heard as much as they want direction. They want to feel competent. They want to feel capable. They want to know that there's a direction they can go, that they can create order out of the chaos of their lives and become something useful again. And I think that's the kind of conversations that we want to have.
I think if you look at the stats, like men are just more likely to commit suicide. They're more likely to be addicted to drugs or incarcerated or homeless. And it's really sad because I think that, while women have accelerated and there's a lot of equality there, which I think is awesome, by the way, I think what's happened is there's this lost generation. There's this lost subset of the population and men that feel like they don't have the same support that women do.
Yes. And it's not that that I think they're looking for different types of support, right? Look, at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that men and women are not the same. They're equal, but they're not the same. We need different things. And men tend to be have a loss of competence and agency, and feel like they don't have a value that they can share that can be directly applied to their life. And they're looking for that to be restored, to feel competent and powerful and capable, and a goal that can be accomplished and a direction to go is far more important. It's far more important to me than feeling seen and heard. I remember sitting in my IOP one day and telling everyone about my struggles and saying, just want you to know that it makes sense that you feel depressed and that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. My life is a complete disaster. I hope there's something wrong. I hope that you would say, oh, we need to figure this out. That you could be a lot more than you are right now. And here's the direction to go to do it. And I found it irritating that it was just this kind of, just so you know, there's nothing wrong and that's exactly how you should feel. Like, okay, great. Now what? Which direction do I go? And I think a lot of young men are feeling that lacking of direction and agency, and that there isn't a lot of messaging out there that says, hey, guys out there, listen, if that's how you feel, I hear you. I know how it feels. And I want you to know that your desire to feel competent and capable and have a direction that you can go and you can act on, we feel it too.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that people will appreciate is our stories. Like, I think that for me, and I'll share a little bit about me. It's like I think that guys, they feel that they're alone. They have no one to talk to, and I think that listening to conversations or even and content like this kind of makes them feel included and not so alone. Like, oh man, I totally relate to that person, or I totally relate to that guy, what that guy had to say. And I was a guy that struggled as a young man for a long time. And then I got myself into the depths of addiction, smoking a lot of weed, snorting coke, oxy, the whole 9 yards. And then I ended up going to jail, which saved my life. And when I went to jail, I was heavily addicted to Oxycontin. I was 21, had 21 jobs by the time I was 21 years old, heavily addicted to drugs, no self esteem, no purpose, no meaning, depressed, anxious, like everything that could possibly be wrong with me, at least what I thought was wrong. I was 40% body fat, um, completely out of shape. And for a while, I had been blaming everybody else for my problems but myself. I was trying to find any excuse I possibly could to make it somebody else's problem and not my own. And that looked like, blaming my parents for my addiction, looked like blaming kids in school for why I was making poor choices. It meant blaming everybody else but myself for my problems. Fast forward to when I'm in jail, I detoxed cold turkey from the Oxycontin because I was doing hundreds of milligrams every single day. And then my cellmate was like, "You're going to start exercising with me." And I was like, "There's no way I'm going to exercise. Like, I'm so fat and deconditioned. It's just not going to work." And then we had a conversation shortly after that changed my life. And we were in the cell and he was asking me questions like a good coach would ask, like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you blah, blah, blah?" And my first thought was to blame everybody else. And I did. I said, "It's my friend's fault. It's my family's fault. It's this and that." And the PG version of this is he said, "Quit being a wuss, quit being a victim." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" Because I was so used to like textbook, "Oh my God, Doug, I am so sorry. Like, come here, give me a hug, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Dude, like, you're blaming everybody else for your problems. There's plenty of people that went through the exact same situation as you, but they're not in jail, right?" And I said, "Yep." He said, "Right now you're at a crossroads. You have two choices. Blame everybody else for your problems and be a little wuss, go cry in the corner, or be a man and suck it up and say that it's up to you to change." And at that moment, the drugs had been out of my system for a bit. And I was like, man, like this guy's right. Two things can be true. I had a very unfortunate upbringing, what is what most people may say, right? I also contributed a lot, if not most, to my downfall because of how I responded to that. And for a while, I was just betting on the prior that, like, oh, I could just use the way that I thought I was treated to like as an excuse to green light every other bad decision I made. And so he's like, dude, like, no one's coming to save you. And for a while, I wanted addiction to save me. It's like Gabor Mate famously has said, and I know you've talked about this too. It's like he says, instead of looking at the problem with addiction, like look at the problem it's solving and the solution. Like, what is it giving you? And 9.9 times out of 10, it's solving emotional pain and some level of emotional pain. It's not just trauma, in my opinion. It's wanting to fit in and feeling insecure. That's a level of emotional pain, right? It's wanting to feel good about yourself. That's a level of emotional pain. It's something from the past. It's whatever. And so for me, that's what it gave me was this ability to solve the emotional pain. And on top of that, um, it allowed me to feel good about myself because now I was also selling drugs, which made me feel important and loved, and the things that at the time I didn't feel like when I was growing up. So when I'm in jail and this guy is looking me in the eye and essentially calling me out of my BS, I'm like, dude, I got to change. And so ended up um ended up starting to work out, and which was humiliating. I get down to do a push up, couldn't do a push up, not even for my knees. Could barely do one for my or could barely hold myself up. And with his motivation and encouragement training me in there every single day, I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile by the time my sentence was over. And that changed my life. I still have my workout plan sitting on my shelf here. Um, and so that way so that way I never forget where I came from, and that I can show people that are interested in kind of like learning where I came from as well. And I've just been on this tear ever since for the past, it'll be 18 years later this year to help other people change their lives, whether it's through fitness, the podcast, coaching, speaking. And so I say that in it's a very short version of my story without like getting too much into the weeds of it. I share that because I get it. I get the guy that has low self-esteem. I get the guy that's not confident. I get the guy that wants to be cool. I get the guy that can't change his friends. I get the guy, every flavor of that I get. And so Adam, I'm curious to hear like your passion? Like, where did this all come from for you?
Well, yeah, so it's, you know this obviously, but for those of you who are listening and watching, Doug and I have very similar stories. You know, like Gabor Mate says, what is the solution? I always like to ask, when I think about addiction, why does it make so much sense? For me, I had unfortunate things that happened in my childhood that completely crushed my self-worth and self-esteem. And by the time I was in high school, I was overweight. I was being bullied. We had moved to a new town. I was being bullied verbally and physically, and I couldn't figure out how to make myself become a person that was confident and competent and could take charge of the things that were making my life absolutely miserable. And every single day that I would get up to go to school, I would feel hopeless. I would feel despair because I couldn't get a sense of how I was going to figure this out. And I would do it in fear because I didn't want to go to school because it was physically unsafe. I didn't want to be at home because sometimes it was emotionally unsafe. And every day was like that. And that's a painful experience. I mean, that's a depressive and anxious driving experience. And my solution came in the form of stimulants. I realized that if I took high doses of stimulants, it gave me a sense that I could find a way out of this. It gave me direction. It gave me ability. I could solve my weight problems. I could solve my, ability to be confident. I could make friends. I could actually take charge of the things that were difficult, like studying and finding interest in things. It gave me all of the purpose, direction, agency that I could not generate for myself with ease and repeatability. And I was so attracted to it. I grabbed a hold of that use and I used like nobody's business. And it worked and then it didn't. And by the time I, was in college, I ended up dropping out so I could go back to my hometown and engage in all the criminal drug addict activity, buying and selling on the streets, stealing from people, treating my family like garbage. To the point where I'm 30 years old, I'm nearly homeless, I'm nearly 350 pounds, and I tried to end my life. And thankfully it didn't. I ended up in rehab with the help of my family, which I know that's a privilege to have a family that will support you no matter what. And I remember being in this situation early in my rehab experience. It was day 3, where I had to go meet with the physician because it turned out not only was I drug addicted and obese, but I had very advanced type 2 diabetes. I had heart disease. I had all these other, physical and psychological conditions that were very advanced.
Mm.
The the cliche plan that I had was like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna take 28-day vacation from use. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna use better. Like that's like I don't have a problem. That whole trajectory was completely destroyed by the idea like, hey man, if you just take care of the addiction, you might still be dead in 5 years, right? Like you've got to really think about what you really want for yourself. Do you want this thing called life or do you not? Because if you do, you have to change everything. You have to change everything about the way that you move through the world, or you're not going to get there. And it really asked me to consider, what is recovery? And I'd always thought recovery was just not using, but I had to kind of think of it in the terms of being able to design and build yourself into a person and build your life into something where use is no longer necessary. Okay, what does that look like? I set myself on this like mission of like radical and fanatical interest and attention into figuring that out. And just like with you, Doug, fitness and nutrition became a lever that you pulled to create agency and capability for yourself physically as a man and as a person in recovery. I did the same thing. I also threw myself into like the recovery world. Like I took recovery therapy very seriously, and I was very lucky to find the work of a guy named Doug Lyle. He's an evolutionary psychologist, and evolutionary psychology really spoke to me. It really helped me figure out why does it make so much sense from an evolutionary perspective, from a mechanistic perspective, and from a personal perspective that these things feel the way that they do, and what's the way out of it. And I was able to lose nearly 200 pounds and reverse my diabetes and my heart disease in about 5 months. I was able to. I've been sober now for nearly 14 years, and I got sober with a bunch of men in a sober living house, and I became very good friends with a lot of them. and not all of them made it, you know? I lost several friends to overdose who were actively interested in recovery. Recovery is not a, it's not the, it's not the safest thing to do all the time. That it's not a guarantee. So one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is because I was a young man in recovery, and so I can speak to that person. And I wish that this podcast existed so that maybe those friends that I had who didn't make it, maybe they could have had something to listen to that spoke to them specifically. I don't know if it would have saved them, but I just know that this didn't exist. And I wish it had, even for myself. I wish I had another, young guy to listen to who's like, hey, just so you know, I hear you, I see you. And
Mm.
there's a place for you that exists in the world where you don't need drugs anymore. I guarantee you that place exists. You may not see it, but trust me. And the conversations we're going to have on this show are hopefully going to give you the confidence that one day you're going to wake up and find it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, bro, you said so much gold in there, and I think that the idea of identity, I think, has played a role in both of our transformations, and you kind of alluded to that, like becoming the person that doesn't need to use drugs anymore. And I think that that's where people get lost because, I think that they have to they think that they have to identify as an addict for the rest of their lives. I mean, I personally think that, and this might get me in trouble, but I don't think that everyone is an addict necessarily. I think that you have seasons of life that could impact things like addiction. You have seasons of life where maybe you're more prone to being addicted. But the idea that every single person is an addict for the rest of their life, I don't think is true. And the reason I say it, it's not to say that, yeah, you can just use drugs or whatever in the future. I'm not saying that at all. It's that if you accept that as your identity, there's a chance that you'll limit yourself. Why? Because in the recovery community, there's there's a lot of people that it's like my only goal is just to stay sober, stay in the recovery. In my opinion, great short-term goal, bad long-term goal. It needs to be a long-term goal, but that doesn't need to be your only long-term goal. Your long-term goal should be, reestablishing relationships, building self-confidence, getting fit, contributing to society, getting married, having children if you like, whatever, not just staying sober. Because when you identify like that, you limit yourself and you'll say things like, "Oh, I'll never be able to do that because of the addict in me," or "I'll never be able to fix that because of the addict in me." When you change your identity, like kind of like you were saying, hey, like I'm becoming this person that no longer needs drugs. You're now using that as a superpower and understanding that, your story and everything else that you went through, like built you to be able to handle, um, whatever it is that you're going
You're actually really hitting the nail on the head because it's about future orientation, right? So like if you're going to say, I just want to be sober for the rest of my life, that doesn't really create a clear understanding of what your future looks like. Like what's your aim? Like what are you aiming for instead of looking away from? Like to
through.
abstain from something just means not doing something. It's a passive decision, right? It doesn't really create a sense of what is the active direction that you want to aim your efforts towards, that you're interested in, and that if you did well and you got there, life would be interesting and meaningful and hopeful and safe and secure, right? So I think that future orientation is such a huge part of recovery. You have to have a clear sense of where you want to go, why you want to go there, why it matters, and then build yourself into the person that can get to that place that life is for, right? So, a lot of that is, built around uh, purpose and direction and agency, as I mentioned before, but also about values and priorities. Like your values and priorities shouldn't be built around the passive behavior of not using. It should be built around what you would actively replace that use with. That's character definition. That defines who you are and why it matters to you. Like for you in the beginning, it's like, well, I want to stop using. Well, of course you do. Of course I did. That's obvious. Well, then what are we going to do instead? Well, you and I found fitness and nutrition. Well, that's great. Those are great things to replace use with. Oh, we might want to find community and brotherhood with it. Well, I found that in sober living. That's good. I found people that were interested in doing the things I was interested in doing. We wanted to go in the same direction together, and we were all uniquely interested in it and the efforts of getting there. That's fantastic. That allows you to feel like, oh, I have a sense of value and purpose I can share within a community of shared respect. All of those parts of it are hopefully helping you get a sense of who would you like to be if you could, and what would that life look like? And if you got there, would use no longer be as necessary? I think that that's a big part of recovery that has to happen sort of past that short term of like, I need to stop using. Well, it's like, yeah, well, when you're dysregulated and you had like an overdose 2 weeks ago and we just got you off of all of your drugs and you're on stabilizing medication, let's just have you not use. Great. But at a certain point, it has to become more than that.
It does. And then that point is different for everyone. I think that you have to understand, like, when is it going to be, um, they, like, when is it going to be your time to make that transition? So I think it's different for everyone. I think that for sure, like at the beginning, your first goal should be to like completely take care of the crap you have going on that's related to addiction. It's to, stop using the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it is. And then I think what helps is two things. One, or there's two things here that I think it's important to understand. One is when you're going through that and you're trying to, stay away from cravings and find new people and all the things, like some of these habits that are going to be better for you long term will help you do those things. Like getting into fitness when you are like newly sober is going to help you with cravings. It's going to help you feel good about yourself. It's going to help you find community. It's going to help you feel good about yourself. And it's also a great long-term habit to have, right?
Yeah.
So when
And
you're talking, yeah,
it also is the perfect example of long-term success, right? Like it's not instant gratification, right? We all know that if you were to start working out today, that tomorrow you're not going to be fit. Everyone knows that, right? And to be fair, if someone was to ask, well, when will I be fit? They wouldn't be able to say. They go, I don't know. Some people take different times than the other person. I don't know. But 100% of people who keep training get fit. It's the same kind of deal with recovery. Well, how long until these cravings aren't a problem? I don't know. It's different for everyone. But 100% of people who commit their lives to recovery and building themselves into a person who can tolerate cravings, it ends up being less disruptive in their life. And so I find that fitness is such a perfect kind of micro universe for recovery because you're in it. You can seek support from people who have done it, but you've got to put in the effort. You've got to show up and do the work. And the work won't translate to success tomorrow, but tomorrow will eventually come. And are you willing to be comfortable being uncomfortable, tolerate the stress of not knowing when, but do it because you know it's always going to be in your best interest. You will definitely become a better version of yourself if you just kept doing the thing. And so I think fitness is like almost an imperative. Like if necessary, you have to.
well, it's like what are the things that addicts struggle with at first? Number one, instant gratification.
Yeah.
Fitness, when you get into fitness, and if you do it the right way, um, you're taught how to delay gratification. You're taught how to put in effort now for future rewards, right? It's kind of like going into from like day trading to like long-term investing. It's the same kind of principle where you're putting in the work now slowly, and then over time you're building, a lot of wealth in your health, right? No pun intended there for the little rhyme, but and I think what it also teaches you is okay, you're going to go to the gym and maybe you're not going to see results day one. It's not going to give you that huge dopamine rush, and also accepting that's okay. And then also you're compounding these small wins and these habits that are helping you with self confidence. You're teaching your body that you can do hard things, right? Like doing an extra set or whatever, and just consistency, like recovery, like if you had to bring, it's really about consistency, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you be
Exposure over
consistent?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also meet new people. It's a great way to meet better friends there too.
Well, I also like when so
Hmm.
resilience is something that's built, right? So you might be inspired to do something, and that inspiration drives interest and attention, and you start doing the thing. and then you do the thing and it seems like it's going well and that motivates you to keep going. At a certain point, you're going to get some kind of result that's undeniable, that what you're doing is fundamentally shifting the trajectory of your life upward. And it's undeniable that it's the thing that you've been doing that's causing it. And now what you're doing is you figured out that now you're resilient in your efforts to do so because the future is building is now clearer than ever and you want it. It's interesting and important to you so that when the days come up that are difficult, and they will, everyone has tough days, everyone has days where they don't really want to train, you will do it because you're so clear about what it's creating for you that you're willing to tolerate being comfortable, being uncomfortable, so that you can keep doing the thing because now it's more than just fitness. Now it's more than just being in the gym. Now it is the engine that is building the life you never thought you could have. And here it is. You can see it in the horizon. And that psychological resilience is so important because without it, without a sense that you're moving somewhere, that you're moving upwards and in a direction that is important, without that purpose, without that reason to struggle, well, now your struggles are pointless. Now everything will collapse under the weight of its own difficulty, right? Without a reason to do the thing that matters to you, everything that's difficult is difficult for no point at all. And that is suffering.
I totally agree with you. And I think that there's a lot of other things that people can do, that can help like reinforce this, because I think, we started this with talking about how people feel alone and lost, right?
Yeah.
I think obviously watching content like ours and other stuff helps people not feel alone, and then going to the gym and doing stuff like that. I also want to say, like, going to meetings and finding community is a great way to not feel alone. I mean, I think that's like if you were to ask people who have been in AA or NA or 12 step for a really long time, what's the number one thing you think they're going to say that benefited them? The community, right? It's going to a place where they feel included, they feel like they're not going to be judged, whatever. Okay. There's a lot of people that don't like to um feel there's a lot of people that don't want to feel like they are going to AA or NA. And they like, "Oh, what do I do if I don't believe in God? What do I do if I don't want to do the 12 steps? What do I do?" And like the David Goggins in me is just show up and do it anyway, and just, until you have a reason not to.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I say that is because I think sometimes you have to embrace it and just say, hey, give it a shot for 30 days,
Oh,
60
yeah.
days, 90 days. And if for some reason, like it's just not your thing, find something else. Find online community support groups, find church, go to like a temple, like whatever works for you to find community
Yeah.
that supports
Yeah.
that.
You can't do this alone. And if you don't have to, why would you want to? I think that, one of the most important parts of community, especially when it's like a community, where if you were to go to AA, you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You don't have to justify your struggles to someone else, and that's a form of relief to look around the room and know, hey, not only do I get a sense of what all these people have struggled with, I believe them when they share their struggles, and they believe me. This community of shared respect is important. Now,
Hmm.
you're not required to agree with everything they say. Heck, you're not required to agree with 90% of it. You may only agree with 10% of it. And if that 10% is valuable, take it. I had a huge problem with 12 step when I first got into sober living. I was like, I don't want to go. I don't like the God thing. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, okay, Adam, great. And so then you're going to deny that there's nothing of value there whatsoever because of that one thing. And also, have you ever been to a meeting? I'm like, no. They go, well, how arrogant, man. It, you think this is valuable or not? You never even heard word one. Like, why don't you go and then come back and have any sense of accurate, sense of it? I loved the people in this sober house that I had they were very kind of military, which I think I really needed and I thrived. I remember I woke up uh, after the first week, I got assigned my first chores. I lived in a sober living house with 12 other guys. who were aged,
Really?
20 to 40, right? So you can imagine the state of the place at certain times of day. And my chore was doing the dishes. I had to do the dishes every night so that we would wake up with clean dishes. I was doing the dishes for 12 guys. So you can imagine what that kitchen looked like. And I remember the first night, I was like, I'm not going to do this. I just went
Was
to
it
bed.
was it bad?
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah. I mean, like you could imagine, it was like the pile in the sink and everything was just crazy. So I just went to bed and the house manager wakes me up at like 4:30 in the morning. He's like, Adam, get up. I'm like, what? Like, get up. You got to go do the dishes. Like, no, man, I don't want to do the dishes. He's like, oh, I know you don't want to do the dishes and go do them. And I remember just thinking like, I don't want to do this. And he just looked at me and goes, whether you want to or not is irrelevant. I'm not interested in waiting for you to want to do the thing. This is the thing you have to do. Go do it. He's like, you can yell, you can kick and scream, you can throw a fit while you do it. I don't care. Get it done. And I just remembered that I needed that. It was kind of like that thing that happened for you. It's like you can either go in the corner and cry like a wuss, or you can actually take care of your life. Those are your choices. It may not be entirely your fault that you're in that situation, but like, you know, time to do the work. Go do it. Like there is no more excuses. And I found that so empowering. So when I threw out the noise about the meeting, they're like, nah, like you're not winning this. You're going. Period. End of story. Like then you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, man. It's tough. I think when you're in that place, it's like, how do you take that first step? How do you let your guard down and be like, all right, like this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna do the thing. I'm gonna do it. Stop making excuses. And part of it's like reaching out and asking for help. You and I were having a conversation. It was probably a couple months ago. And we were just talking shop a little bit. And you said something to me that stuck that I think a lot of people miss, especially addicts, in that when you're going through addiction, you're afraid to open up. Why? You're afraid to open up because you think that people are going to judge you. Okay, cool. Understand that. You think that people are going to think less of you. I totally understand it. You think that you're going to end up like being like ejected from your current life and then thrown into, a place you don't want to be, right? The issue is that everybody already knows. If you're around someone long enough, everyone already knows that your life is falling apart. People are
Yeah.
watching you. People are paying attention. So the longer you let that play out, it's just getting to get worse. Like you telling people that you have a problem, like people who are around you enough, like, oh, I was wondering when you were going to tell me. You know what I
Yeah, the
mean?
greatest lie that you tell yourself when you're active in addiction is the idea that those who love you the most don't know everything. Like they know 90%, and 90% is a lot, right? That last 10% may also be a lot, but trust me, if you're not hiding it, right? If you're at that point where you're seeking, potentially checking into treatment, but you're scared to say to somebody what's going on, it makes sense because look, the the greatest fear in human psychology is banishment. It's being left, it's being sent out alone to survive, the chaos of the world alone. It isn't death. You're far more scared of being banished from the community and from those who matter the most that could protect you than you are dying. And so what you're afraid of is, hey, now look, you may know what's going on, you may have a sense of what's going on, but man, if I was to tell you everything, you might not want me anymore. And that might be, I may not be able to tolerate that. And so there's that fear. But I mean, for the majority of people, I would say for those who are actively in your life while you're at this point of your addiction and they're there for you and they love you and they care, give them the benefit of the doubt that they know enough and they're still there. They know enough and they're still there. And you don't need to share everything. You say, I just need help. Like that's one of the hardest things to do.
You know what's the most twisted part about all this?
Hmm.
Is that what's the biggest fear people have, right? They're not going to love me anymore. I'm not going to be accepted, et cetera, et cetera. But the more you keep behaving like that, the greater your chances become of your relationship being damaged with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because then, like, if it gets to the point where then you're stealing, or God forbid, you like hit something where it gets real bad, you're in a position now where now they know, and there's harsher consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, the thing about, I think that one of the most difficult things about addiction is the confusion of it is that there was a point in time when it worked, and it not only worked, it worked well. Like, it worked. And you can't convince me that it didn't work,
Mm.
because you don't know what my life felt like before I started using, and you don't know how well it solved for those problems when I started using. So don't tell me that this thing can't work for me. And what I would really like to do is just get it back to there. I want to get it to where it was working again, because when it works, it's amazing. And in order for that to happen, I have to keep using, right? And I don't know if I could ever tolerate life without using, because I remember life before using and it was not easy. And now I have sunken cost, right? I've lost 20 years or whatever it is. And how am I ever going to do that? It's far more risky for me to not use. Trust me, that's the internal thoughts. Like, let me figure this out. I just need a little bit more. I just need to figure this out. And it's so hard to take that leap of faith and go, you know what? It's never going to work again. In fact, it's only going to continue to deteriorate and destroy my life physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, financially, everything. It's never going to work again. And I don't know what will. That is a leap of faith that is terrifying. And so you're asking someone to basically throw themselves into the darkness and find their way out of it. And that's a scary thing. And so, recovery is an act of faith and courage that, when taken, should be applauded just in its effort. Like, it's an effort, extraordinary effort that's worthy of applause just in and of itself.
Yeah, and it's hard to find those wins, right? Because I think that when you're used to getting these crazy dopamine, rushes from drugs,
Oh yeah.
like, you're like, "Oh, man, I didn't use drugs for 1 day. What's the big deal?" Like, it doesn't feel it feels decent, but it's not like this huge thing you're used to getting.
Right.
It's just tough because now you're, like, pretty much kind of switching your brain back, and, I know Doug Lisle talks about the pleasure trap, right? It's like it's switching your brain back to having a healthy level how healthy relationship with pleasure.
Yeah,
Meaning
those dopamine neural circuits, they've been insulted significantly through exposure to these intense, stimuli, to where now the pleasure you got from doing things in life, you don't get, for a significant amount of time. It's not nothing. It's like 3 weeks, at minimum, before you start to restore dopamine sensitivity. So doing the healthy, appropriate thing will actually feel like a poor decision, especially when you've habituated yourself to, super normal stimuli like drugs and alcohol, sex, pornography, things like that, where now, in order to feel like you're doing well, you have to engage in these extreme behaviors. And so, again, you can't see the end of the road. It's like, well, I'm doing it. I stopped using. I started doing the things you've been saying. And you know what? This week felt like the worst week I've ever had. So, like, how does that work? How does recovery get me a life that feels good when now it's worse than it's ever felt? Like, you got to give me a timeline here. When does it get better? And they go, oh, you just got to do the work. It's like that. That's tough. That's an act of blind faith.
we'll keep watching our channel and things will get better. I think this is a good place for us to kind of end part one. I think we gave people a lot of info here. We're going to expand on a lot of these ideas. We're going to talk about habit formation. We're going to talk about finding community. We're going to talk about fitness. We're going to talk about just lifestyle, neuroplasticity, neuroscience, behavior change. Anything else you want to add, Adam, for this one?
I just want to let, people know, especially the audience that we're speaking to, young men and people who are, uh, taking care of young men. So parents out there, um, is that you make sense, right? Your struggles make sense. Uh, you're not crazy. You're not biology and psychology gone wrong. You have a path forward. It's probably not obvious to you, and it might not be something that is, um, uh, something that's easy to say or easy to admit or easy to do. But if done and done well, the life that you deserve is on the other side of that hill. And I've seen it myself. I've seen it in friends of mine like Doug, and I've seen it in hundreds of people that I've either gotten sober with or helped get sober. That if you're willing to take on the extraordinary effort of climbing this hill of recovery and getting interested in it and finding your direction and finding your purpose and finding your worth, on the other side of that hill is the life that you've always deserved to have. And I hope that the guests that we bring on this show are going to speak to you and create language and understanding that gives you the confidence that you are not a one-off mistake. That you, like anyone who's ever gotten sober and recovered well, have the capacity to do exactly that. And we, Doug and I, we see you out there, for all you guys out there who are struggling with any kind of behavior that you don't want to be engaging with anymore. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's just, using too much or doing, partying too much or engaging in social, in pornography or gambling, whatever it is. And you can have a better life. Doug and I see you. This show is made for you, and we hope you come and watch.
Like, share, subscribe, comment, all the things, right? Well, Adam, this is cool, man. I'm really looking forward to this, and we're super excited to help and to provide content that can be meaningful.
Yeah. All right, man.